to this? It's already
yeah, it has.
To perform Hajj 70 times, and I remember every one of the names of the horses I had mounted to go to Baytullah. I know all the names of those horses, and I know all of their lineage and their nasab. Also, Rasulullah also made dua for a person. He says, and this dua is for us, since we're sitting here, that Naddarallahu Imran. That Sami'a maqalati, Naddarallahu Imran, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep that person happy. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a smile on his face. Sami'a maqalati, he has heard my sayings, he has heard my hadith. وَأَدَّاهَا كَمَا سَمِعَهَا. And he had conveyed it to others the same way he had heard it. The same way he had heard it. There's another science by the name of Asma'ul Rijal, and this is directly linked to Hadith. The art of Asma'ul Rijal is that every one of the narrators that comes in the chain of any particular Hadith, everything is recorded about them. What their name was, what their parents' name was, where they were born, where did he pass away, what type of man he was, what did he do for a living, how many kids he had, who were his teachers, who were his students. Everything is recorded about this one individual. And the muhaddithin go through all the narrators in that particular chain, and if they see that this man at this given time, he had lied to a person, his daraja, where he's supposed to belong, what makes a hadith sahih, will not come down to da'if. Just because of him lying once, if it was caught by muhaddithin. This is why I said in the beginning that to non-Muslim ahadith are considered the strongest pieces of history. Actually, Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, he was once traveling to a different country to take benefit from one shaykh. And he had with him 1,000 dinar in a small bag. He had with him 1,000 dinar. And so someone came to him and he found out that he had this much money with him. Imam Bukhari was basically taking all he had, or most of his money, so that he can spend it for himself because he's going to a foreign land to seek benefit from a different scholar. So anyways, he's on the ship and someone finds out that he has this much money with him. And all of a sudden he goes on the ship and he gathers everyone, he says that, you know, I'm missing this type of bag with this much money in it. I'm missing this bag. And so Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, he told the students, he said that I could have went to everyone and said that, you know, he wants my money and this and that, and that's why he's making a huge commotion. But he said, to save myself from moving down from the Sahih list, I took the entire bag, I went to the corner of the ship and I threw all what I had in the water. And I threw all of what I had in the water, just to preserve his status, so that the people after him can take benefit of the sayings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are two things that completely shock the people that live on writing against Islam. There are two things. Number one is a hadith and how it's preserved. They can't understand that if a man said something, how can someone write what he said, live it, practice it, and then teach it to his kids or his students, and then he takes it and he teaches it to his students, all the way down to us? They just can't understand that. And the second is usul al-fiqh, the principles of law. You have law, but how do you have principles of law? You have law, but how do you have the principles? How do you have usul of the Islamic law? So again, ahadith and the preservation of ahadith is one of the things that shock these people. Like I said, there are 2-3 things that we use to preserve ahadith. Number one is amal, is practice. When you bring something into practice, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu was that sahabi who was known in the Sahaba to practice or to try to practice on every sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, to the point where once he was traveling and he was with some of his companions or some of his friends. And this was after the demise of Rasulullah ﷺ. And when they were traveling, Ibn Umar said, you know, let's stop here. Stop here for a bit. And he gets off his horse, and he goes behind a bush, and he acts like he's using the bathroom, and he acts like he's making istinja, and then he comes back and he asks his students that, do you know what I just did? So he said, no. Please do tell us. So he said that when I was traveling with Rasulullah ﷺ, this very same place, Rasulullah ﷺ stopped us here, and he went to that corner, and he used the bathroom, and just to complete the sunnah, I'm doing this. Even though I didn't have the desire or the need to use the bathroom. So number one is amal. When you put anything into practice, that's much more stronger than recording it in books or memorizing it. Number two is the capacity or memorization, putting things to memory. As we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the muhaddithin an unmeasurable and unexplainable memory. An unexplainable memory. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was once called by Marwan, the ruler of that time. And Marwan had told Abu Hurairah that I want you to say a hadith to me. I want you to tell me about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Marwan beforehand, before calling Abu Hurairah into his court, he had told people behind the curtain, he said that every hadith that Abu Hurairah would tell us, record it. And so Abu Hurairah was going on and giving the hadith to Marwan, and all of it was being recorded behind the curtain. Next year, Marwan calls Abu Hurairah again. He says that, remember last year you came and you gave me these ahadith? He says, I want you to say it to me in the same tartib, in the same order that you have said it to us last year. And Abu Hurairah does not make one single mistake. And he recites to him all the ahadith in the same exact order he had recited to Marwan the previous year. The story of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah is very famous. All of these great muhaddithin have the stories. Time is very short, so we're just quickly going over it. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was once asked, actually someone wanted to test him as to how good his memory was, because everyone heard everyone heard about his memory. And so they asked Bukhari rahimahullah, and they said that they had 10 people. They had 10 people, and all of these 10 people were to say 10 ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ with its sanad, with its chain. And they were all commanded to either change the words of the Prophet ﷺ or to mess up in the chain of the hadith. And so the first person comes, and he was assigned 10 ahadith. And so he starts with this first one. And after he is done reciting the first one, he asks Imam Bukhari that, do you recognize hadith? He says, I don't recognize hadith. And then the second one he says, do you recognize the hadith? Imam Bukhari says, I don't recognize the hadith. The third one, the fourth, and the fifth, until 10 ahadith, this person goes to the side. The second person comes with the 10 ahadith, and the same thing happens. He changes either the words of the Prophet ﷺ, or he messes up in the chain of the hadith. And he says, he asked Imam Bukhari, you recognize hadith? And so in the end, the people that were there, they were like, you're such a great muhaddith. You know, the entire area knows about you, and these basic hadith you haven't heard of. And so he says that the first person that came to me, he quoted me this hadith, this is the actual hadith, and this is the exact chain. And then the second hadith. Now notice here, this is very easy to say. It's very easy to say. Imam Bukhari knew every narrator, and he knew all of what I said before, that you have to know when he's born, what his parents' name was, what his kid's name was, how many kids he had, how many teachers he had, who the teachers were, how many students they had, everything about the narrator. So not only is he giving you the correct chain, which is hard, he's also giving you the correct hadith, but over that he's giving you the same exact order. That the first person came to you with this first hadith, and then he moved on to his second, and then he moved on to his third. And so this is another way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made it such that he had preserved his ahadith was through memory. Number three, kitabatul hadith, is the writing of the ahadith. And this is something that the rejectors of hadith, they bring up. They say that Imam Bukhari and these great Imams that you say, Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Muslim, Riyadh al-Salihin, they were all written hundreds of years after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Bukhari was written 200 plus years after Rasulullah ﷺ passed away. So how can you trust Imam Bukhari in the ahadith that he narrates regarding Rasulullah ﷺ? This is completely wrong. Ahadith, and before going on, they also bring some narrations where Rasulullah ﷺ ordered some of the Sahaba that la taktubu anni, that do not write what I say, do not write from me. And they bring this hadith, they say, how can you trust hadith when Rasulullah ﷺ himself said, don't write what I say? The reason for telling some of the Sahaba not to write what Rasulullah ﷺ says was because when the Quran was being revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, as we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ in 23 years, not all at once, right? It was over a span of 23 years. And so, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was first sending down to Rasulullah ﷺ the revelation, the Sahabas would write the verses of Quran, and any hadith or anything the Prophet ﷺ said, they would write it next to it. What this would do later on is that it might confuse the other readers. That which one is the revelation from Allah and which one is the hadith. Some Sahaba, like Aisha radiallahu anha, she used to write the hadith beneath or on top of the ayah. And so again, so people don't get confused that which one is the Quran and which one is hadith. So Rasulullah in the beginning he said, "La taktubu anni," do not write what I say. But when the Prophet saw and noticed that now the Sahaba have a clear distinction between the Quran and between hadith, he didn't not only gave them permission, but he ordered them. Some of them he even ordered. Like one Sahabi came to the Prophet, he said that can you do something about I hear what you say, but I forget it very easily. So Rasulullah said, "Ista'in bi yaminik," that seek help from your right hand, right? And he even moves his hand like someone is writing something. Right? And he even orders some Sahaba, Abu Hurairah, he orders Abdullah ibn Amr al-As that write down the ahadith. Once Rasulullah was sitting with the Sahaba, and he was talking to the Sahaba, and there were about 1 or 2 of them, they were writing everything he says. And so one person came and he says, don't write everything the Prophet ﷺ says, he's just as human as we are. He gets mad, he gets angry, he can say different things. Rasulullah then he pointed towards his mouth. He says, "Walladhi nafsi biyadi," that I swear by Allah that nothing comes out of my mouth except for haqq and except for the truth. That nothing comes out of my lips except for haqq. Right? And it is all worthy of writing. So I explained to you the hadith that the people that reject hadith bring. They have a hadith where they say that don't write from the Prophet. The Prophet is himself saying it. And I also told you the reason why the Prophet ﷺ said a certain thing, and the fact that he also ordered many Sahaba to write what he said. Another thing they bring up, like I told you guys before, was that they say that Imam Bukhari came 200 plus years after the Prophet ﷺ. How can we trust their hadith? Again, like I said, it was even written in the time of the Sahaba. In fact, Abu Hurairah, his students who heard the hadith from Abu Hurairah, had written down all the hadith that they heard from their teacher Abu Hurairah, and this is till now preserved. Their original copy is preserved. In the actual or the original copy is in Dimashq, in Syria, and the other one is, I believe, in Germany, the copy of it. Right? But there are many different accounts of where these very old kitabs, and for example, Sahifa al-Sadiqa. Al-Sadiqa was a Sahifa, or the book that Abdullah ibn Amr al-As compiled. And so there were many of these books that are still available today. Not many, some of them. I remember someone asking our teacher, he said that, how come we don't find all these books? We only find Bukhari, we only find Muslim, we don't find Sahifa al-Sadiqa, we don't find Abu Hurairah, we don't find Ali radiallahu anhu's collection, we don't find where did this all go? If we all remember, who came into Iraq and burned all of their books To the point where they said that so many books were burned and they were thrown in the water in the river that the river turned black. Remember that story? Right? Yeah. That's when they came in and they destroyed many of these books. But still muhaddithin, before the occurring of this incident, they had recorded from these books. For example, Abu Dawud, he had quoted some ahadith that were in these collections. So it's not that they're total wasted. Yes, they're wasted because many of them were gone. And believe it or not, there were many valuable books that were destroyed when he came with his army and decided to burn and to throw all these books in the river. And obviously it wasn't that easy back in the day where one scholar writes a book and he gets it published and you have like 1,000 copies of them. Right? It was original stuff. I mean, the scholar wrote this, the book is preserved, you go and you read it. All these original texts were destroyed. But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works with wisdom. There must be wisdom behind every action. So, the Sahaba had also written a hadith. In the time of the Tabi'een also record the hadith like Makhul, Imam Sha'bi, all these great muhaddithin. They were the students of the Sahaba and they had also recorded a hadith. Also in the time of the students of the Tabi'een themselves, like Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, all these people had also recorded the hadith. Another thing we're going to talk about here is the different types of books of a hadith. There are over 20 types of books of a hadith. So it's not only Bukhari and Muslim and Tirmidhi and the ones we know of, and that's the end of the story. But forget 20 books, there are over 20 types of books. For example, Jami', right? As-Sahih al-Bukhari is also called al-Jami' al-Bukhari. And the title Jami' is given to that hadith book that has 8 chapters in it. It has 8 chapters in it. It has siyar, it has adab, it has tafsir, it has aqaid, it has fitan, it has ashraq, and it has ahkam, and it has manaqib. What's siyar? Siyar, the battles that Rasulullah participated in. Details about that. Adab, how to eat, how to drink, how to walk, how to talk. It has that recorded. Tafsir. That's why there's a difference of opinion between scholars regarding Muslim, Sahih al-Muslim. Can we consider Sahih al-Muslim as Jami' or not? Because in Sahih al-Muslim, the chapter of tafsir is extremely short. There's only 2-3 ahadith Imam Muslim brings in his Sahih about tafsir. So there's a great difference of opinion, but muhaddithin come to a decision, they say that it is also considered Sahih because there's still a chapter. Right? And then aqaid, Islamic beliefs, fitan, the fitan that will happen, ashraq, different things that are the signs of qiyamah, ahkam, rulings on different things, salah, zakah, hajj, bay', nikah, manaqib, and stories. So Jami' is a title that's given to this particular books. And then there's many different ones. There's Sunan. Sunan are those books like Sunan Abi Dawud, and Tirmidhi is also considered Jami', is also considered Sunan because it works on the order of fiqh. If we notice all our fiqh books, they start with Tahara. They start with Tahara, purification, and they go Salah and Zakah and Hajj. Whereas Imam Bukhari and these people, when they start their books off, they start with the basic, they start with Iman. So Sunan are those books that work on the fiqh side of it, right? Like Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi. And there's Musnad, there's Mu'jam, there's Mustadrak, there's Mustakhraj, there's Juz, there's Mashikha, there's Arba'inat, there's Al-Atraf, there's Al-Hadith Al-Mashhura, Al-Amali. All these are only the types of books. And there are hundreds of books that fall under each of these categories. Get to the main part, inshallah, and we'll end off with this, inshallah. We got a bit late today, but inshallah next week we'll start a bit early. Da'if and Sahih ahadith. We love to talk about this. We say a hadith, and someone says, this is da'if. Right? And then you have it the other way around. So where do we draw the line? What's Sahih and what's da'if? If you present a hadith from Tirmidhi, right? A man will say, well, is it Bukhari? No, I'm not going to take it. Right? So to some people, hadith has to be from Bukhari. This is not the case. In fact, you'll be surprised that there are some hadith in different books besides Bukhari and Muslim. For example, Ibn Majah. There are some ahadith that are even stronger than the ahadith of Bukhari and Muslim. Because what makes a hadith sahih or what makes it da'if is not the hadith itself. Rasulullah never said this hadith is sahih, this is da'if. Right? The things that make it sahih or da'if are the people narrating that hadith. Are the people narrating that hadith. Also, Imam Bukhari never claimed to gather or to collect all the Sahih Hadith that Rasulullah ever said. Right? This was never Imam Bukhari's claim. Right? A lot of people say Imam Bukhari has said, Imam Bukhari is Muslim, and besides that, I'm not listening to anything. Right? This is the wrong approach. Because Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, he never said that I'm going to be gathering in here all the Sahih Ahadith. Another thing is that sometimes one of the Imams, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, they would narrate a hadith, or they would call, or some other scholar for that matter, might call any other Imam's hadith da'if. Right? And they would say that how can Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Shafi'i come up with this ruling while the hadith is using for this ruling is da'if? What we have to remember is that when we say that Abu Hanifa used this hadith as proof for this mas'ala, in his time, that hadith was not considered da'if. Because Imam Bukhari he came after Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i. So it's very possible that the hadith Abu Hanifa is quoting has only two people in between him and the Prophet ﷺ. But when it comes down to Bukhari, it has 5 to 7 to 8 to 9 people. So anywhere in the chain, someone can, it's very possible that someone lied on one occasion after Abu Hanifa received the hadith, and now they're considering it da'if. Right? This is another very important thing to remember. Another thing is that you would find sometimes one hadith, some scholars will say this hadith is sahih, some scholars say this same hadith is da'if. Right? And I just told you how we get to that conclusion, that we look at the people behind, the people that are narrating the ahadith. But how do we draw the line? How do we draw the line? Because one scholar is saying this is da'if, one scholar is saying this is sahih. You'll be surprised to know that there are some scholars that are so harsh in their rulings as to where they draw the line between sahih and da'if hadith. For example, Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah. They are not mentioned. He said, Imam Bukhari, this hadith he has quoted here, this is da'if, because of this narrator. And this hadith here in this chapter, this is da'if because of this narrator. And then there is some that are very soft, and even the hadith that are a bit da'if, they say it's sahih, it's okay. Like Imam Hakim. Right? Imam Hakim. And so so if we have one person that's saying this is da'if, we have one person saying this is sahih, we're going to look at the people who are saying it. And we're going to go to the middle path. For example, Ibn al-Hajar al-Asqalani was a great Shafi'i muhaddith. Every person who was ever a scholar after Ibn al-Hajar, every person that was ever a scholar after Ibn al-Hajar, the chain that he has for any particular book of hadith goes to Ibn al-Hajar al-Asqalani. He's in every chain. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani was a great, actually Hafiz Ibn Hajar is his title, Hafiz. Back in the days, memorizing the Quran was a big thing, but it wasn't as big as Hafiz al-Hadith. That Hafiz was given as a certain title that was given to a scholar who had memorized a particular an amount of the hadith. For example, it drops by the years, obviously we didn't have the type of memory they had, but it was 100,000 hadith by memory. Not only the hadith, but the condition was that you know with this chain of narrators, right? So 100,000, that's a lot, right? And like I said, in Asma'ul Rijal, that science where every one of the narrators, all of their whole life is recorded, 600,000 is a number, it sounds easy, it sounds 600,000. But if we were to even count from 1 to 600,000, how long would it take? And each of those 600,000, those muhaddithin had memorized the ahadith that were narrated from them in their entire life. Right? So it's an easy number to say, 600,000. But if we were really to sit there and even count from 1 to 600,000, it would be amazing. So all of that was recorded by muhaddithin. And so Ibn Hajar, I was saying, Hafiz Ibn Hajar was his title because he had memorized so many ahadith. And check this out. Ibn Hajar, when he goes, his students, they say, once he went to perform Hajj, or he went for Umrah, and he grabs the cloth of the Kaaba, he grabs the ghilaf, and he's making dua to Allah. He says, Ya Allah, give me the memory Imam Zahabi had. Imam Zahabi was another muhaddith that came before him. So you can imagine, this is the type of memory Ibn Hajar had at his time, right? And the muhaddithin before him, imagine what type, he's making dua to Allah, that Ya Allah, just give me his memory. And look at Ibn Hajar's memory himself, right? So this tells us the memory that these muhaddithin had possessed, had. I was going to give the chain today, but there's one more thing, inshallah, we will cover before we go on. And that is, as we're going to be, inshallah, doing Riyadh al-Salihin, we're going to be reading Riyadh al-Salihin. And the great scholar who compiled the ahadith of Riyadh al-Salihin, his name is Imam al-Nawawi, al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. And if you notice, a lot of these books that these scholars had written back in the days, next to their name, they would put what madhab they follow. Right? So they would put like al-Shafi'i, al-Nawawi al-Shafi'i, or Ibn Hajar al-Shafi'i, right? So a little bit about taqleed and fiqh, right? And where that comes from, right? Because some people have, they raise objections to how would you follow this imam? And you find you're following Imam Shafi'i, Imam Hanifa, Imam Ahmad blind, you have something around your eyes and you just, whatever he tells you, you're just going to accept it, right? So a little bit about Imam Nawawi, and then inshallah the first hadith, I will give the chain from myself to Rasulullah. Ibn Hajar Asqalani, the scholar I was just talking about, meets us about halfway. He's closer to Rasulullah. That he meets us almost halfway, right? And between me and the Prophet ﷺ, there is about 23 people. Between myself and the Prophet ﷺ, there's about 23 people. But I will bring to you another chain, because what we do when we finish these books of Hadith, Bukhari, and Muslim, we go to our teacher's teacher, if he is alive, to make the chain shorter. That's why there's something called the golden chain. The golden chain is the smallest sanad, the smallest chain a scholar might have. Right? And so many scholars, they go to different countries just to study from that scholar, so they can. And Imam Bukhari, he even he traveled 1,000+ miles to not to get a hadith from a scholar, but he already had the hadith. He already knew of that hadith. But he wanted to take the hadith that he took from his teacher. He wanted to take his teacher out of the way and go to his teacher. And so he goes, he travels this distance, and he finds out he has moved and he's not there. And he comes back. And then a couple of years later, he goes back again. Right? And so not only for one hadith did they travel this much distance, but just to remove one link in that chain, they used to travel just that much distance. So I'll bring one sanad I have, that between myself and the Prophet ﷺ, there's about 19 or 20 people in that chain. That will be with the first hadith. After that, because obviously Imam Nawawi, it's not Bukhari, right? That I can do the entire chain of Bukhari and that will suffice for all the hadith. But Imam Nawawi, he took it from Bukhari, he took it from Muslim. Right? He took it from these two people, he took it from other people. And so just the first hadith, because إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ is such a hadith that has been quoted in Bukhari and Tirmidhi and Muslim and all these different books of hadith, inshallah, just by giving you any one of the chains, whether it's Bukhari's or Muslim, it will suffice. So inshallah, the chain will be next week. And then we will carry on with the books. If you have any questions?
Yeah. We were talking about Prophet
He said that, Wallahi, everything that escapes my lips is haq, is truth. I can't remember the exact wording of the and then he says, yeah, I think I should have it in my notes here, I'm not sure. But Sahabi's point was that, you know, the Prophet ﷺ is as human as us, and he gets angry and he will say things that are not appropriate at times. And so Rasulullah, he pointed towards his, the narrator says in the hadith, he says that he took his finger to his lips, and he says that, Wallahi, everything that escapes my lips is haq. And then and truth, and he ordered the Sahaba to write whatever he says.
So with the incident when, I think, I don't know which battle it is, but when the Prophet ﷺ said, we go out and meet them, but then one of the companions stood up and he said, is this from you or is this wahi from Allah? And the Prophet ﷺ said, this is from me. And then he said, well, I have a different approach to it. We should stay here and meet them here.
Yeah.
So how would that fall into the, because he basically said that this is not from me. He's saying that in this situation, this is not wahi from Allah.
Okay. Everything that the Prophet ﷺ says or does is considered revelation. But there's revelation or wahi is not only Quran. Right? Muhaddithin, they classify it as the Quran is considered wahi matlub. Right? It's read. And then there's second, that's wahi ghayru matlub. That's not read. For example,